Hello, and welcome back to Baby Elias's stories. We now return to Thud by Terry Pratchett, Part 11. Fred Cullen peered through the bars. He was, on the whole, a pretty good jailer. He always had a pot of tea on the go. He was, as a general rule, amiably disposed to most people. He was too slow to be easily fooled, and he kept the cell keys in a tin box in the bottom drawer of his desk, a long way out of reach of any stick, hand, dog, cunningly thrown belt, or trained Clatchian monkey spider. Footnote 13. Making Fred Cullen possibly unique in the annals of jail history. Annals, a record of events arranged in yearly sequence. End footnote 13. He was a bit worried about this dwarf. You got all sorts in jail, and they often yelled a bit, but with this one, he didn't know what was worse. The sobbing or the silence. He'd put a candlestick on a stool by the bars too, because the dwarf carried on alarmingly if there wasn't enough light. He stirred the tea reflectively and handed a mug to Nobby.
"We've got a rum un here, I reckon," he said. "A dwarf that's scared of the dark? Not right in the head then. Wouldn't touch his tea and biscuit. What do you think?"
"I think I'll have his biscuit," said Nobby, reaching over to the plate.
"Why are you down here anyway?" said Fred. "I'm surprised you ain't out there oogling of young women."
"Tarniti's going out boozing with the girls tonight," said Nobby.
"Ah, you want to warn her about that sort of thing?" said Fred Cullen. "You know what it's like in the centre when the pubs and clubs empty. There's throwing up and yelling and unladylike behaviour and taking their vests off, and I don't know what it's called." He scratched his head. "Minge drinking."
"She's only gone out with Angua and Sally and Sherry, Sarge," said Nobby, taking another biscuit.
"Ooh, you want to watch that, Nobby? Women ganging up on men?" Fred paused. "A vampire and a werewolf out on the razzle? Take my tip, lad. Stay indoors tonight. And if they start behaving in..."
He stopped as the sound of Sam Vimes' voice came down the spiral stone steps, followed closely by its owner.
"So I've got to stop them forming a block, right?"
"If you're playing the troll side, yes," said a new voice. "A tight group of dwarves is bad news for trolls."
"Trolls shove, dwarves throw."
"Right."
"And the central rock, no one can jump that, right?" said Vimes.
"Yes."
I still think the dwarves have it all their own way."
"We shall see. The important thing..." Vimes stopped when he saw Nobby and Cullen.
"Okay, lads, I'll talk to the prisoner now," he said. "How is he?"
Fred indicated the hunched figure on the narrow bunk in the corner cell.
"Captain Carrot tried talking to him for nearly half an hour, and you know he's got away with people," he said. "Didn't get as much as his sentence out of him. I read him his rights, but don't ask me if he understood him. He didn't want his tea and biscuit at any rate. That's rights 5 and 5B,
he added, looking Bashfulson up and down.
He gets right 5C only if we've got tea time assortment.
Can he walk? Said Vimes.
He sort of shuffles, sir.
Fetch him out then, said Vimes, and seeing Fred's inquiring look at Bashfulson, he went on. This gentleman is here to make sure we don't use the rubber truncheon, Sergeant.
Didn't know we had one, Mr. Vimes,
said Fred. We haven't, said Vimes. No point in hitting him with something that bounces, eh? He added, looking at Bashfulson, who smiled once again his strange little smile. One candle burned on the table. For some reason, Fred had seen fit to put another on a stool near the one occupied cell.
Isn't it a bit dark in here, Fred?
Said Vimes, as he pushed aside the debris of mugs and old newspapers that covered most of the table.
Yes, sir. The dwarfs came and nicked some of our candles to put round there. That nasty sign,
said Fred, with a nervous look at Bashfulson.
Sorry, sir.
I don't know why we can't just burn it, grumbled Vimes, setting out the Thud board. That would be dangerous, now that the summoning dark is in the world, said Bashfulson. You believe in that stuff, said Vimes. Believe? No, said the Grog. I just know it exists. The troll pieces go all round the central stone, sir, he added helpfully. Populating the board with its little warriors took some time, but so did the arrival of Helmclever. With Fred Cullen steering him carefully by a shoulder, he walked like someone in a dream, his eyes turned up so that they mostly showed the whites. His iron boots scraped on the flagstones. Fred pushed him gently into a chair and put the second candle beside him. Like magic, the dwarves' eyes focused on the little stone armies to the exclusion of everything else in the jail. We're playing a game, Mr. Helmclever, said Vimes quietly, and you can choose your side. Helmclever reached out with a trembling hand and touched a piece. A troll. A dwarf had chosen to play as the trolls. Vimes gave the hovering Bashfulson a questioning glance and got another smile in return. Okay, you got as many of the little swords as possible in a defensive huddle, right? Vimes's hand hesitated and shifted a dwarf across the board. The click as he played it was echoed by the one made by the movement of Helmclever's next troll. The dwarf looked sleepy, but his hand had moved with snake speed. Who killed the 4 mining dwarves, Helmclever? Said Vimes softly. Who killed the boys from the city? Dull eyes looked at him, and then meaningfully at the board. Vimes moved a dwarf at random. The Dark Soldiers, Helmclever whispered, as a little troll clicked smartly into place. Who ordered it? Again the look. Again a dwarf placed at random, followed by a troll that was moved so fast the 2 pieces seemed to hit the board together. Gorak Hamcrusher ordered it. Why? Click, click. They had heard it speaking. What was it that spoke? Was it a cube? Click, click. Yes, it was dug up. It said it spoke with the voice of Barayan Bloodaxe. Vimes heard a gasp from Bashfulson and caught Fred Cullen's eye. He jerked his head towards the cell block door and mouthed a couple of words. Wasn't he a famous dwarf king? Said Vimes. click, click. Yes, he commanded the dwarves at Koom Valley, said Helmclever.
And what did this voice say?
Said Vimes. Click, click, and a third click from behind Vimes as Fred Cullen locked the door and stood in front of it, looking impassive. I do not know. Ardent said it was about the battle. He said it was lies.
Who killed Grog Hamcrusher?
Click, click. I do not know. Ardent called me to the meeting and said there was terrible fighting among the Grogs. Ardent said one of them killed him in the dark with a mining hammer, but none knew who. They were all struggling together.
All dressed alike, Vimes thought, just shapes, if you can't see their wrists. Why did they want to kill him?
Click, click. They had to stop him destroying the words. He was screaming and hitting the cube with the hammer. There are sensitive areas on a cube, and it is possible that if they are touched in the wrong order, all of the sound will vanish, whispered Bashfulson.
I should think the hammer would do the trick, whatever it hit,
said Vimes, turning his head. No, Commander. Devices are immensely tough.
They must be.
Vimes turned back to Helmclever.
It's wrong to destroy lies, but it's okay to kill the miners, he said.
Click. He heard the hiss of Bashfulson's intake of breath. Well, yes, perhaps that could have been better put. There was no answering move. Helmclever hung his head. It was wrong to kill the miners, he whispered. And why not destroy lies? But it is wrong to think these thoughts, so I said nothing. The old Krogs were angry and upset and confused, so Ardent took charge. He said, one dwarf killing another underground. Everyone knew that was no business of humans. He said he could make it all right. He said everyone must listen to him. He told the dark guards to take the body to the new outer chamber, and he told me to fetch my club. Vimes glanced at Bashfulson and mouthed the word club. He got an emphatic nod in return. Helmclever sat hunched in silence, and then raised one hand slowly and moved a troll. Click, 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 click. Vimes tried to spare a few brain cells for the game while his mind raced and labored to piece together the random information spilling out of Helmclever. So, it all starts when they come here looking for this magic cube, which can speak. Why did they come to this city? How did they know the cube was here? Click, click. When I went to begin my training, I took a copy of the Codex. Ardent confiscated it. But then they called me to a meeting and said it was very important, and they would honor me by letting me go with them to the city. Ardent told me it was a great opportunity. Grog Hamcrusher had a mission, he said. They hadn't even known about the painting. They lived under a mountain. They believe that humans are not real, but Ardent is smart. He said there were always rumors that something had come out of Koom Valley.
I bet he is smart, Vimes thought. So they come here, do a little light pastoral work and rabble-rousing and search for the cube in a very dwarfish way. They find it, but the poor bastards who are doing the digging hear what it's got to say. Well, everyone knows dwarves gossip, so the dark guards make sure these four don't have a chance to.
Click, 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 click. Then, friend Ham Crusher doesn't like what he hears either. He wants to destroy this thing. In the struggle in the dark, one of the other Grogs does the world a favour and fetches him a crack on the noggin. But, whoops, big mistake, because the mob is going to miss him and is jolly urging to wholesale troll slaughter. You know how dwarves gossip, and you can't kill 'em all. So while it's still just us together in the dark, we need a plan. Forward Mr. Ardent, who says, I know, we'll take the corpse out to a tunnel that a troll just might have got into and bash its head in with a club. A troll did it. What right-thinking dwarf could possibly believe anything else? Click, click. Why the candles? Said Vimes. The old grogs were sitting in brilliant candlelight when I saw them. Click, click. The Grogs ordered it, Helm Clever whispered. They feared what might come for them in darkness. And what was it that might come? Click. Helm Clever's hand stopped in mid-air. For several seconds, nothing moved in the little circle of yellow light except the candle flames themselves. In the darkness beyond, the shadows craned to hear. I cannot say, whispered the dwarf. Click, 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 click. Vimes glared at the board. Where'd that troll come from? Helm Clever had wiped 3 dwarves off. Helm Clever had wiped 3 dwarves off the board in one go. Ardent said there's always a troll. A troll got into the mine, said Helm Clever. The Grogs said yes, that must have been it. But they knew the truth. Click, 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 click. 3 more dwarves gone, just like that. Truth is what a Grog says it is, said Helm Clever. The sunlight world is a bad dream anyway. Ardent said no one was to speak about it. He said I was to tell all the gods about the troll. Blame it on a troll, Vimes thought. For a dwarf, that came naturally. A big troll did it and ran away. This isn't just a can of worms. It's a nest of bloody vipers. He stared at the board. Bloody hell, I'm running into a wall here. What am I left with? Brick saw a dwarf hitting another dwarf, but that wasn't the murder. That was Ardent or someone giving Ham Crusher's dead body that distinctive bash by a troll look. And I'm not actually certain that's a major crime. The murder was done in the dark by one of 6 dwarves, and the other 5 might not even know who did it. Okay, maybe I can say they conspired to conceal a crime. Hold on. But it wasn't Ardent who said that the watch should not be told, he said. That was you, wasn't it? Did you want me to be angry, Mr. Helm Clever? He moved a dwarf. Click. Helm Clever looked down. Since no answer was forthcoming, Vimes captured the wandering troll and placed it beside the board. I did not think you would come. Helm Clever's voice was barely audible. Ham Crusher was. I think. I didn't. Ardent said you wouldn't worry because the Grog was such a danger. He said the Grog had ordered the miners to be killed, and so now it was ended. But I thought it. It wasn't right. Things were wrong. I heard you were full of pride. I had to get you interested. He. You thought I wouldn't be? A troll is accused of murdering a dwarf at a time like this, and I wouldn't be interested, said Vimes. Ardent said that you wouldn't be because no humans were involved. He said you would not care what happens to dwarves. He ought to get out in the fresh air more. Helm Clever's eyes and nose were running now and dripping on the board. A storm stops the battle, Vimes thought. Then the dwarf lifted his head and wailed. "It was the club the troll Mr. Shine gave me for winning 5 games in a row," he wailed. "He was my friend. He said I was as good as a troll, so I should have a club. I told Ardent it was a war trophy, but he took it and bashed that poor dead body." Water dripping on a stone, Vimes thought. And it depends on where the drops fall, right, Mr. Shine? What good has it done this poor devil? He wasn't in the right job to have doubt enter his life. "All right, Mr. Clever. Thank you for this," he said, sitting back. "There is just one thing, though. Do you know who sent those dwarves to my house?" "What dwarves?" Vimes stared into the weeping, red-rimmed eyes. Their owner was either telling the truth or the stage had missed a major talent. "They came to attack me and my family," he said. "I did hear Ardent talking to the captain of the guard," Clever murmured. "Something about a warning." "A warning? Do you call—" Vimes began, and stopped when he saw Bashfulson shaking his head. Right. No point in taking it out on this one. He's had all the stuffing knocked out of him in any case." "They are very frightened now," Clever said. "They don't understand the city. They don't understand why trolls are allowed here. They don't understand people who don't understand them. They fear you. They fear everything now."
"Where have they gone?"
"I don't know. Ardent said they would have gone now anyway, because they've got the cube and the painting," said Clever. "He said the painting will show where there are more lies, and those can be destroyed. But they fear, most of all, the summoning dark, Commander. They can feel it coming for them."
"It's only a drawing," said Vimes. "I don't believe in it."
"I do," said Clever calmly. "It is in this room. How does it come? It comes in darkness and in vengeance and in disguise." Vimes felt his skin twitch. Nobby looked around the grimy stone walls. Bashfulson sat bolt upright in his chair. Even Fred Cullen shifted uneasily. "This is just mystic stuff," Vimes told himself. "It's not even human mystic stuff. I don't believe in it, so why does it feel a bit chilly in here?" He coughed. "Well, once it knows they've gone, I expect I'll head out after them." "And it will come for me," said Clever in the same calm voice. He folded his hands in front of him. "Why? You didn't kill anybody," said Vimes. "You don't understand. They... When they killed the miners, one was not all the way dead, and we could hear him hammering on the door with his fists, and I stood in the tunnel and listened to him die, and I wished him dead so that the noise would stop, but when it did, it went on in my head, and I could have turned the wheel, but I was afraid of the dark gods, who have no souls, and because of that, the darkness will take mine." The little voice died away. There was a nervous cough from Nobby. "Well, thank you again," said Vimes. "Good grief, they really messed up his head, poor little sod. And I've got nothing," he thought. I might get ardent on a charge of falsifying evidence. I can't put Brick in the witness box because I'll simply be proving that there was a troll in the mine. All I've got is young Helmclever here, who's clearly unfit to testify. He turned to Bashfulson and shrugged. I think I'd like to keep our friend here tonight for his own good. I can't imagine there's anywhere else for him to go. The statement he made is of course covered by... Now his voice trailed off. He turned back in his chair to glare at the sorrowful Helmclever. What painting? The painting of the Battle of Koom Valley by Methodia Rascal, said the dwarf, not looking up. It's very big. They stole it from the museum.
What?
Said Fred Cullen, who was making tea in the corner.
It was them? What? You know about this, Fred?
Vimes demanded.
Yes, Mr. Vimes, we did a report. Koom Valley! Koom Valley! Koom Valley!
Roared Vimes, slapping his hand down on the table so hard that the candlesticks jumped into the air.
A report? What the hell good's a report? Have I got time these days to read reports? Why doesn't someone tell me these things?
One candle rolled onto the floor and went out. Vimes grabbed for the other as it reached the edge of the table, but it spun away from his fingers and landed wick first on the flagstones. Darkness fell like an axe. Helmclever groaned. It was a heartfelt, soul-creaking groan, like a death rattle from a living mouth.
Ah! Nobby! Screamed Vimes. Light a god's damn match right now, and that's a god's damn order!
There was a frantic scrambling in the dark, and then a match head was a sudden supernova.
Well, bring it here, man!
He shouted to Nobby.
Get those candles lit!
Helmclever was still staring at the table where the ill-tempered thump had scattered the remains of the game. Vimes glanced down at the game board as the candle flames grew. If you were the kind to see things, you'd say that the trolls and dwarves had fallen in a rough circle around the central rock, while a few more dwarves had rolled away in a line. You'd say, in fact, that from above they formed the shape of a round eye with a tail. Helmclever gave a little sigh and slipped sideways onto the floor. Vimes stood up to help him and then remembered just in time about politics. He forced himself to back away, hands in the air. Mr. Bashfulson, he said, I can't touch him. Please? The Grag nodded and knelt down by the dwarf. No pulse, no heartbeat, he announced after a few seconds. I'm sorry, Commander. Then it looks as though I'm now in your hands, he said. Indeed, in the hands of a dwarf, said the Grog, standing up. Commander Vimes, I will swear that Helmclever was treated with nothing but concern and courtesy whilst I was here, and perhaps with more kindness from you than a dwarf might have a right to expect. His death is not on your hands. The summoning dark called him. Dwarves will understand.
Well, I don't. Why'd it kill him? What did the poor bugger do?
I think it's more true to say that the fear of the summoning dark killed him, said the Grog. He left a miner trapped, heard his cries in the dark and did nothing. To all dwarves, this is a terrible crime. As bad as wiping away a word, said Vimes sourly. He felt more shaken up than he'd care to admit. Some would say it is far worse. His own guilt and fear killed him clever. It's as if he had his own summoning dark in his head, said Bashforson. In a way, perhaps, we all have, Commander, or something similar.
You know, your religion really messes people up, said Vimes.
Not in comparison to what they do to one another, said Bashforson, calmly folding the dead dwarf's hands across his chest. And it is not a religion, Commander. Tuck wrote the world and the laws, and then he left us. He does not require that we think of him, only that we think. He stood up. I shall explain the situation to my fellows, Commander. Incidentally, I would ask you to take me with you to Koom Valley.
Did I say I was going to Koom Valley?
Said Vimes. All right, said the Grug calmly. Let's say, then, that should the mood take you to go to Koom Valley, you will take me. I know the place, I know the history, I even know quite a lot about mind sign, especially the major darknesses. I may be useful.
You demand all that just for telling the truth, said Vimes.
As a matter of fact, no.
Jids has fuck this.
I bargain with no axe in my hand. I will tell the truth. I will tell the truth, whatever you decide, said Bashforson. However, since you are not going to Koom Valley, Commander, I will not press you. It was only an idle thought. Fun. What is it good for? It's not pleasure, joy, delight, enjoyment, or glee. It's a hollow, cruel, vicious little bastard. A word for something sought with an hilarious couple of wobbly antennae on your head and the words, I want it, on your shirt. And it tends to leave you waking up with your face stuck to the street. Somehow, Angua had acquired a magenta feather boa. It wasn't her. It wasn't anyone. It had just turned up. The sheer fakery of it made her more gloomy. Something was nagging at the back of her mind, and it annoyed her that she didn't know what it was. They had ended up in Beers, as she knew they would. It was the undead bar, although it tolerated anyone who wasn't too normal. It certainly tolerated Tornii. She just didn't get it, did she? The reason why men never talked to her. The trouble was, thought Angua, that Nobby wasn't actually a bad person as such. As far as she knew, he'd always been faithful to Miss Pushpram, which was to say that when it came to being hit with a fish and then pelted with clams, he never thought of any other girl but her. He actually had quite a romantic soul, but it was encased in what could only be called Nobby Nobs. Sally had accompanied Tornii to the ladies, which always came as a shock to people who hadn't seen it before. Now Angua was staring at yet another cocktail menu painted on a board above the bar in a very shaky script by Igor. Footnote 14. Who wasn't an Igor but was merely called one. It was best not to have fun with him on this subject, and especially not to ask him to sew your head back on. End footnote 14. He'd done his best to flow with the zeitgeist. or would have done if he'd known what the word meant. Zeitgeist. 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 The general intellectual, moral, and cultural climate of an era. Zeitgeist. He'd done his best to flow with the zeitgeist, or would have done if he'd known what the word meant, but had totally failed to grasp the subtleties of the modern cocktail bar, so that the drinks on offer included having your teeth smashed in by a big stinky fist, head nailed to the door, kick in a fork like big lump of steel hammer through your ear's neck bolt. Actually, the neck bolt wasn't too bad, Angua had to admit. "Excuse me," said Sherry, teetering on a bar stool, "but what was all that about Tawny? I could see you and Sally nodding to each other." "That? Oh, it's the jerk syndrome." Angua remembered who she was talking to and added, Dwarves probably don't have that. It means sometimes a woman is so beautiful that any man with half a brain isn't going to think of asking her out, okay? Because it's obvious that she's far too grand for the likes of him. Are you with me? "I think so." "Well, that's Tony. And for the purposes of this explanation, Nobby has not got half a brain. He's so used to women saying no when he asks them out that he's not afraid of being blown out. So he asks her, because he figures why not? And she, who by now thinks there's something wrong with her, is so grateful she says okay." "But she likes him?" "I know. That's where it all gets strange." "It's much simpler for dwarves," said Sherry. "I expect it is." "But probably not as much fun," said Sherry, looking crestfallen. Tawnii was returning. Angua ordered 3 neck bolts while Sherry hopefully negotiated for a screaming orgasm. Footnote 15. Patience is a key virtue amongst dwarves. End footnote 15. And then, with occasional assistance from Sally, Angua explained to Tawnii the facts of, well, everything. It took some while. You had to keep changing the shape of sentences to get them to fit into the currently available space in Tawnii brain. Angua clung to the idea, though, that the girl couldn't be that stupid. She worked in a strip club, didn't she? "I mean, why do you think men pay to watch you on stage?" she asked. "Because I'm very good," said Tonii promptly. "When I was 10, I got the Dancers of the Year award in Miss Deviante's ballet and tap class." "Tap dancing?" said Sally, grinning. "Hey, why don't you try that on stage?" Angua closed her mind to the image of Tonii tap dancing. The club would probably burn to the ground. Let me try this another way," she said. "And I'm telling you this as another woman, as another female." Tonii listened intently, and even the way in which she looked puzzled was unfair to the rest of her sex. When Angua had finished, she watched the angelic expression hopefully. "So, what you're saying, right," said Tonii, "is that walking out with Nobby is like going into a big posh restaurant and only eating the bread roll?" "Exactly," said Angua. "You've got it." "But I never really meet men. Granny told me not to act like a floozy." "And you don't think that working at—" Angua began, but Sally cut in. "Sometimes you need to flooze regularly," she said. Haven't you ever just gone into a bar and had a drink with a man? No. Right, said Sally. She drained her glass. I don't like these neckboards. Let's go somewhere else and... She paused. Open your mind to possibilities. It was odd, having Sybil in Sodopolis Yard. It had been one of the Ramkin family houses before she'd given it to the Watch. She'd been a girl there. It had been her home. Some apprehension of this crept into the chipped and stained souls of the watchmen. Men not known for the elegance of their manners found themselves automatically wiping their feet as they came in and respectfully removing their helmets. They spoke differently too, slowly and hesitantly, anxiously, scanning the sentence ahead for expletives to delete. Someone even found a broom and swept up, or at least moved the dirt to a less obvious place. Upstairs, in what had been until then the cash office, young Sam slept peacefully in a makeshift bed. One day, Vimes hoped, he would be able to tell him that on one special night he'd been guarded by 4 troll watchmen. They'd been off duty but volunteered to come in for this, and were just itching for some dwarves to try anything. Sam hoped the boy would be impressed. The most other kids could hope for was angels. Vimes had commandeered the canteen because it had a big enough table. He'd spread out a map of the city. A lot of the rest of the planking was occupied by pages from the Koom Valley Codex. This wasn't a game. This was a puzzle. A sort of yes jigsaw puzzle, and he ought to be able to do it. He reasoned because he already had nearly all the corners. Ettercap Street, Money Trap Lane, Crybaby Alley, Scuttlebutt Court, the GBs, Pellycool Steps, he said. Tunnels everywhere. They were lucky to find it after only 3 or 4. Mr. Rascal must have had lodgings in half the streets in the area, including Empirical Crescent. But why? Said Sir Reynold, stitched. I mean, why dig tunnels everywhere? Tell him, Carrot, said Vimes, drawing a line across the city. Carrot cleared his throat. Because they were dwarves, sir. The deep downers at that, he said. It wouldn't occur to them not to dig, and mostly it'd be just a matter of clearing out buried rooms in any case. That's a stroll to a dwarf, and they were laying rails so they could take the spoil out anywhere they wanted. Yes, but surely, Sir Reynold began. They were listening out for something, talking at the bottom of an old well, said Vimes, still bending over the map. What chance that'd still be visible? And people can get a bit iffy when a bunch of dwarves turn up and start digging holes in the garden. It'd be very slow, surely? Well, yes, sir, but it would be in the dark, under their control. And secret, said Carrot. They could go anywhere they wanted. They could zigzag around if they weren't certain. They could home in with their listening tube, and they'd never have to speak to a human or see daylight. Dark, controllable, and secret. Deep downers in a nutshell, said Vimes. This is very exciting, said Sir Reynold. And they dug into the cellars of my museum? Over to you, Fred, said Vimes, carefully drawing another line across the map.
Right,
said Fred Cullen.
Nobby and me found out where only a couple of hours ago,
he said, thinking it wisest not to add,
after Mr. Vimes yelled at us and made us tell him every last detail and then sent us back and told us what to look for.
What he did add was,
They were pretty clever, sir. The mortar even looked dirty. I bet you're saying to yourself, aha, sir?
I am, said Sir Reynald, bewildered. I would normally say, my goodness.
I expect you're saying to yourself, aha! How were they able to build up the wall again after they'd got the Muriel out, sir? And we reckon...
Well, I imagine one dwarf stayed behind to make good, lay low, as you who would say, and who wandered out in the morning, said Sir Reynald. There were people going in and out all the time. We were looking for a big painting after all, not a person.
Yes, sir. We reckon one dwarf stayed behind to make good, lay low, and wandered out in the morning. There were people going in and out all the time. You were looking for a big painting after all, not a person,
said Fred Cullen. He'd been very pleased to come up with that theory, so he was going to say it out loud no matter what. Vimes tapped the map. And here, Sir Reynald, is where a troll called Brick fell through another cellar floor into their tunnel, he said. He also told us he saw something in the main mine which sounds very much like the rascal. But alas, you have not found it, said Sir Reynald. I'm sorry, sir. It's probably long gone out of the city. But why? Said the curator. They could have studied it in the museum. We're very interactive these days. Interactive? Said Vimes. What do you mean? Well, people can look at the pictures as much as they want, said Sir Reynald. He sounded a little annoyed. People shouldn't ask that kind of question. And the pictures do what exactly? Hang there, Commander, said Sir Reynald. Of course. So, what you mean is, people can come and look at the pictures, and the pictures, for their part, are looked at? Rather like that, yes, said the curator. He thought for a moment, aware that this probably wasn't sufficient, and added, But dynamically, You mean the people are moved by the pictures, sir? Said Carrot. Yes, said Sir Reynald with huge relief. Well done. That's just what happens. And we've had the rascal on public display for years. We even have a stepladder in case people who want to examine the mountains. Sometimes people come in with a bee in their bonnet that one of the warriors is pointing to some barely visible cave or something. Frankly, if there was some secret, I would have found it by now. There was no point to the theft. Unless someone had found the secret and didn't want anyone else to find it, said Vimes. That would be rather a coincidence, wouldn't it, Commander? It's not as if anything has changed just recently. Mr. Rascal didn't turn up and paint another mountain. And although I hate to say this, just destroying the painting would have been enough. Vimes walked around the table. All the bits, he thought. I must have all the bits by now. Let's start with this legend of a dwarf turning up, nearly dead, weeks after the battle, babbling about treasure. All right, then it might have been this talking cube thing, Vimes thought. He survived the battle, hid out somewhere, and he's got this thing and it's important. He's got to get it somewhere safe. Now, maybe he's got to get people to listen to it. And of course he doesn't take it with him, because there's still likely to be trolls wandering the area. And right now, they'll be in a mood to club first and try to think up some questions later. He needs some bodyguards. He gets as far as some humans, but when he's leading them back to the place where it's hidden, he finally dies. Forward 2,000 years. Would a cube last that long? Hell, they bob up in molten lava. So it's lying there. Methodia Rascal comes along looking for a nice view or something, and he looks down and there it is. Well, I'll have to accept that he did, because he found it and got it talking. Who knows how? But he couldn't stop it. He drops it down the well. The dwarves find it. They listen to the box, but hate what they hear. They hate it so much that Ham Crusher has 4 miners killed just because they heard it too. So why the painting? It shows what the box is talking about. Where the box is. If you've got the box in your hand, isn't that it? Anyway, who says it was the voice of Blood Axe doing the speaking? It could be anybody. Why would you believe what was said? He was aware of Sir Reynold talking to Carrot. Said to your Sergeant Cullen here, the painting is set several miles from where the actual battle was fought. It's in entirely the wrong part of Koom Valley. That's just about the one thing both sides are agreed on. So why did he set it there? Said Vimes, staring at the table as if hoping to draw a clue from it by willpower alone. Who knows? It's all Koom Valley. There's about 250 square miles of the place. I imagine he just chose somewhere that looked dramatic. Would you chaps like a cup of tea? Said Lady Sybil from the door. I felt a bit at a loose end, so I made a pot. And you should be getting your head down, Sam. Sam Vimes looked panicky. A figure of authority caught once again in a domestic situation. Oh, Lady Sybil, they took the rascal, said Sir Reynold. I know it belonged to your family. My grandfather said it was just a damn nuisance, said Sybil. He used to let me unroll it on the floor of the ballroom. I used to name all the dwarfs. We looked for the secret, but he said... Because he said there was a hidden treasure. Because he said there was hidden treasure, and the painting showed you where it was. Of course, we never found it, but it kept me quiet on rainy afternoons. Oh, it wasn't great art, said Sir Reynold, and the man was quite mad, of course, but somehow it spoke to people. I wish it'd say something to me, said Vimes. You really don't need to make tea for people, dear. One of the officers. Nonsense! We must be hospitable, said Sybil. Of course, people try to copy it, said the curator, accepting a cup. Oh dear, they were terrible. A painting 50 feet long and 10 feet deep is really quite impossible to copy with any kind of accuracy. Not if you lay it out on the ballroom floor and get a man to make you a pantograph, said Sybil, pouring tea. This teapot really is a disgrace, Sam. Worse than the urn. Doesn't anyone ever clean it out? She looked up at their faces. Did I say something wrong? She said. You made a copy of the rascal? Said Sir Reynard. Oh, yes, the whole thing to a scale of 1 in 5, said Sybil. When I was 14, it was a school project. We were doing dwarf history, you see, and, well, since we owned that painting, it was too good to miss. You know what a pantograph is, don't you? It's a very simple way of making larger or smaller copies of a painting using geometry, some wooden levers and a sharp pencil. Actually, I did it as 5 panels, 10 feet square. That's full size to make sure I got all the detail, and then I did 1/5 scale version to display it as poor Mr. Rascal wanted it displayed. I got full marks from Miss Turpitude. She was a maths teacher, you know. She wore her hair in a bun with a pair of compasses and a ruler stuck in it. She used to say that a girl who knew how to use a set square and protractor would go a long way in life. What a shame you no longer have it, said Sir Reynard. Why should you say that, Sir Reynard? Said Sybil. I'm sure I've still got it somewhere. I had it hanging up from the ceiling of my room for some time. Let me think. Did we take it with us when we moved? I'm sure... She looked up brightly. Ah, yes. Have you ever been up into the attics here, Sam?
No,
said Vimes. Now's the time, then. I've never been on a girls' night out before, said Sherry as they walked, a little uncertainly, through the nighttime city. Was that last bit supposed to happen? What bit was that? Said Sally. The bit where the bar was set on fire. Not usually, said Angua. I've never seen men fight over a woman before, Sherry went on. Yeah, that was something, wasn't it? Said Sally. They dropped Tornii off at her home. She'd been in quite a thoughtful frame of mind. And all she did was smile at her man, said Sherry. Yes, said Angua. She was trying to concentrate on walking. It'd be a bit of a shame for Nobby if she lets that go to her head, though, said Sherry. Save me from talkative drunks, Angua thought. She said, Yes, but what about Miss Pushbram? She's thrown some quite expensive fish at Nobby over the years. We've struck a blow for ugly womanhood, Sally declared loudly. Shoes, men, coffins, never accept the first one you see. Oh, shoes, said Sherry. I can talk about shoes. Has anyone seen the new Jan Rockhammer solid copper slingbacks? We don't go to a metal worker for our footwear, dear, said Sally. Oh, I think I'm going to be sick. Serves you right for drinking. Wine, said Angua maliciously. Oh, ha ha, said the vampire from the shadows. I am perfectly fine with sarcastic pause. Wine, thank you. What I shouldn't have drunk was sticky drinks with names made up by people with less sense of humor than, excuse me. Oh, no. Are you all right? Said Sherry. I've just thrown up a small, hilarious paper umbrella. Oh dear, and a sparkler. Is that you, Sergeant Angua? Said a voice in the gloom. A lantern was opened and lit the approaching face of Constable Visit. As he drew near, she could just make out the thick wad of pamphlets under his other arm. Hello, Washpot, she said. What's up? Looks like a twist of lemon, said a damp voice from the shadows. Mr. Vimes sent me to search the bars of iniquity and low places of sin for you, said Visit. And the literature? said Angua. By the way, the words nothing personal could have so easily been added to that last sentence. Since I was having to tour the temples of Vice, Sergeant, I thought I could do Om's holy work at the same time, said Visit, whose indefatigable evangelical zeal triumphed over all adversity. Footnote 16. They say there's one in every police station. Constable, visit the ungodly with explanatory pamphlets was enough for two. End footnote 16. Since I was having to tour the temples of Vice, Sergeant, I thought I could do Om's holy work at the same time, said Visit, whose indefatigable evangelical zeal triumphed over all adversity. Sometimes whole bars full of people would lie down on the floor with the lights out when they heard he was coming down the street. There were sounds of retching from the darkness. Woe unto those who abuseth the vine, said Constable Visit. He caught the expression on Angua's face and added, No offence meant. We've been through all that, moaned Sally. What does he want, Washpot? Said Angua. It's about Koom Valley again. He wants you back at the yard. But we were stood down, Sally complained. Sorry, said Visit cheerfully. I reckon you've been stood up again. The story of my life, said Sherry. Oh, well, I suppose we'd better go, said Angua, trying to disguise her relief. When I say the story of my life, obviously I don't mean the whole story, mumbled Sherry, apparently to herself, as she trailed behind them into a world blessedly without fun.